I'd like all viewers to leave comments on this video that specifically explain if you thought these stories reflected good morality, flawed morality, immorality, etc. You may want to comment on one or two, or you might want to comment on all three of them separately, but please make a distinction to which story or stories you're referring to, and do more than just tell me if you thought the events of the story were a reflection of good morality or not. Explain why you feel the way you do. Shelley was an attractive brunette who lived in Arizona and greatly valued physical fitness. 3 nights a week she would walk down the street she lived on and through the park into the city rec center about 2 miles from her home. She loved to run outside, but the daytime conditions were too hot for it, so she'd walk there in the early evenings and would leave around dusk to run home when it was cooler outside. Shelley was badly abused both physically and sexually by her foster parents as a child, but the experience did not leave her noticeably calloused or scarred. She dealt with it better than the psychologists expected. She grew into a woman with a strong, independent attitude, which, coupled with her shapely physique, drew plenty of attention from surrounding men. Having dealt with that variety of attention for most of her life, she managed to juggle its obnoxiousness and its pleasantness quite well. The last time Shelley ever went for that evening run was late last summer, after leaving the gym later than usual. Following a taxing workday, the therapeutic burn of the weight bench was needed to conjure an ample supply of endorphins for whisking the stress away. She was smiling while feeling them at work already during her quiet jog home. She didn't realize how long her time at the gym had been until noticing the clarity of the stars against a dark galactic background just before gliding beneath the park's deciduous canopy. As her Nikes clapped along the cobblestone path, she felt her slender butterfly knife snug against her outer thigh in the pocket of her light gray yoga pants. It was more common for women who run alone at night to carry pepper spray, or for those in parking lots to clutch their keys between their knuckles, but that just wasn't Shelley's style. She enjoyed the smooth grip of the knife's metallic handle, its discreet size, elegant function, and the thin but fatal double-edged blade. It was the cutlery embodiment of Shelley herself. Though she seldom displayed her practiced blade-drawing technique to her friends, she often longed for them to see her as she saw herself in the mirror when she would efficiently flick the tool into its functional form, with nearly a single motion. It wasn't long into the park before footsteps could be heard behind her, and she thought a heavy pant accompanied them. She casually elevated her pace without looking back. The park's trail never seemed so long, as the faster she ran, the faster the steps behind her and the heavier the deep gasps and ambiguous grunts became. Sweat dripped from her anxious pores when the gasping figure was close enough behind her to slap its wet, masculine hand upon her shoulder. Shelley never screamed. In an instant she came to a stop, planting hard on her left foot. She turned toward her assailant, extracting her bloodthirsty blade from its lycra holster and plunging it deep through the throat of a heavy-set man, releasing it only after a practiced twisting motion sent it through his severed jugular. The large man collapsed, writhing in pain longer and far more grotesquely than Shelley ever expected based on cinematic portrayals of forced death. Her voice and body shook anxiously as the man dropped the contents of his hand and vainly grasped at his draining throat. His utter silence disturbed her to her core as he bled out right before her, and her eyes drifted to the items he had dropped. In one hand had been an inhaler. In the other had been a money clip with several bills and Shelley's gym membership card. Greg and Tina were a wholesome married couple living in Alabama. They were whiter than Beaver Cleaver's ghost and lived in what some would consider a redneck community on the outskirts of a larger southern city. One afternoon, they answered the door to see a black man and a Hispanic woman somewhat nervously saying, "We're your new neighbors." They were shocked, but not resistant. Greg and Tina invited them in, served them coffee, and asked them about their professions, families, and life goals. The newlywed couple had just moved there for a job opportunity, and it turned out they were very grateful of Greg and Tina's hospitality. Every other household in the neighborhood so far had shut the door on them, had unkind words for them, or at the very best quietly dismissed them. Over time, Greg and Tina were able to warm up most of the neighborhood to their friendly new neighbors, and those who opened their minds up enough to get to know them learned to enjoy the pleasure of their company, usually more than that of their longtime neighbors. Keep that in mind the next time that you meet somebody new. Kevin was the kind of person that journalists write stories about that are too gruesome for publication because of how true they are. He was a businessman who wore a clean-pressed suit to work every day. He paid his taxes and bills on time. He had his peculiarities too, though. His dry sense of humor was only favored by a few of his business colleagues, and despite his good looks and financial success, he showed no interest in pursuing romantic relationships. He kept to himself and didn't attend any social gatherings at the office or in his neighborhood. He also had several freezers in his basement filled with the severed appendages of human children. Kevin was just your garden variety, run-of-the-mill, everyday sociopath cannibal. Worst of all was that he was very good at not being caught. He never overindulged in his taste for young human flesh. He would take a new victim only once every 2 or 3 months. His kills were quiet and clean. He used every part of the body as either food or garden fertilizer or fuel for his fireplace. Nothing was ever thrown away, and his pantry full of bleach was put to frequent use for meticulous cleaning. By keeping the frequency of his deeds low and the stock of their product high, he was able to minimize risk and savor his dark pleasures all the more intimately. He enjoyed small morsels of the flesh which his freezers kept preserved, and each of which was carefully sorted and covered by seemingly well-organized food stocks. Ice cream covered the arms and hands, steak and frozen chicken breast covered the legs and feet, and several layers of frozen pizzas covered his stocks of innards and facial extremities. Kevin's fireplace was stoked heavily to incinerate the pesky bones and hair, after which cedar, oak, or pecan wood was always burned to mask the distinctive odor of burnt hair that he loathed so much. Kevin preached the importance of attention to detail. It led to his clean suits, his tidy work, and his apparent innocence. His home was once investigated late in his life when the desperate town had every residential home searched. He was very receptive to their visit, and no scrap of evidence was found to justify further investigation. The moment his constable visitors left, Kevin ignited his stove and began simmering a child's liver. It was the best he'd ever tasted. His stocks and the source of a kidnapping mystery that spanned a 50-mile radius over 40 years long went undiscovered until well after his death of natural causes. Kevin mysteriously willed the contents of his basement freezers to the state police. There will be a follow-up video posted based on your comments in about a week, and if you're viewing this video after that time, please check the annotation that will be on the screen here to see the follow-up video.